The mother says, I finally decided I don't want to have this kid. I'm going to have it aborted.
Right. The left will say that never happens, but it does happen. In fact, I saw it happen when I was in residency.
You don't want to criminalize a miscarriage, for heaven's sakes.
Exactly.
So is the Tennessee law and what you're doing, is that, you think, maybe the model?
I think it is. We hope that it will be something solid that won't be able to be challenged. We're destroying this country because of this woke movement.
Some states look to ban or restrict abortion access. Others are trying to make it more accessible or loosen the restrictions. Dr. Omar Hamada has been a doctor of family medicine for over 30 years. He's a board-certified OB-GYN. He's delivered over 2,000 babies. And Dr. Hamada says there's not a single fetal or maternal condition that requires third trimester abortion. None. Delivery, yes. Abortion, no. Please welcome back to the show, Dr. Omar Hamada. Dr. Hamada, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I am always interested in what you have to say. You're one of the most articulate surgeons and doctors that I've ever had an interview with, and we're so excited to have you back. And right now,
Thank you.
The state of Tennessee has recently passed a bill that allows for some narrow exceptions for abortion. Describe what those are, and are those realistic and reasonable?
Certainly. That's a really good question, Governor. So nobody really thought that R v. Wade would be overturned. And then the whole thing with the Dobbs case in Mississippi that got pushed to the Supreme Court, then got overturned. And Tennessee in 2019 had a bill that passed that was a trigger law that basically said no abortion would be allowed at all. And once that triggered and came into effect, people were scared that if a physician tried to manage an ectopic pregnancy that could be dangerous, fatally dangerous for a mom, or even manage an incomplete miscarriage, that they could be held criminally liable. So there was some reason to reformat the language and allow some exclusions to allow those things to happen. There was a great deal of consternation back and forth between both sides, and I was involved with some of it, helping to craft some of the legislation or serve as a consultant. And what they finally came up with was amazing because both sides basically agreed, and it passed with bipartisan vote in the Tennessee Tennessee House from the floor. I think the Senate it's cleared judiciary. I think it still has to clear the full Senate.
Well, it sounds like that there was some realistic and reasonable things to recognize that there are certain medical conditions. We're not talking about an elective abortion, but where a miscarriage happens, or you mentioned an ectopic pregnancy, which is a medical emergency. But this is not a 18-week or 28-week unborn child that the mother says, I finally decided I don't want to have this kid. I'm going to have it aborted.
Right.
So it's very different.
It is very different. And the left will say that never happens, but it does happen. In fact, I saw it happen when I was in residency here in Tennessee several years back, back 20 years ago. So our law in Tennessee now will not allow any abortion like that to occur. But ectopic pregnancies and miscarriage management, of course, will be excluded.
What about the abortion pill? Because that now has become a big issue. Arkansas is a state that had a law that said if it ever is repealed, we go back to our Constitution. We had a constitutional amendment. So there is really no abortions in Arkansas nor Tennessee. But the abortion pill makes it complicated because somebody can order that from out of state and it gets shipped in. Tell us about how the abortion pill works, and is that something people ought to be aware it could be potentially dangerous to the mother?
It certainly could. When most people talk about that, we're talking about more than the morning after pill. We're talking about RU-486, also known as mifepristone. And that basically blocks progesterone receptors, so it causes a pregnancy to fail in the first 10 weeks of pregnancy. So if we block those progesterone receptors, the pregnancy fails and mom starts bleeding and starts losing the pregnancy. We can reverse that. There are pills we can give if somebody changes their mind after they've taken it. So we can actually save a pregnancy after the mifepristone has been given. So it can be dangerous because it will cause a lot of bleeding, and sometimes people have gotten in trouble with severe bleeding.
What would be the best approach for states that are pro-life to recognize that there are medical situations. Again, we're not talking about elective abortions where somebody says, I just don't want this baby, but where there is, again, a miscarriage. You don't want to criminalize a miscarriage, for heaven's sakes.
Exactly.
So is the Tennessee law and what you're doing, is that, you think, maybe the model for how this ought to look around the rest of the country?
I think it is. We hope that it will be something solid that won't be able to be challenged, because I think it's an excellent model, because it allows for those exclusions without allowing elective pregnancy and elective abortion.
I hear some people who are very pro-abortion, and they say, oh, you're going to criminalize the mothers. And I don't know of a single person in the pro-life world, I really don't, that wants to arrest or imprison or take to trial some mother for any decision that she may make, even if it's a bad one, even if it is an elective abortion. I just don't hear that. So I think that's a false argument.
It is. And I think that in this new law, there's actually a protection for the moms where they cannot be criminally charged. Physicians can, moms can't.
What about, you also served in the military. You were an officer, and so you had quite a wide range of background. How much does it disturb you when you see that the military has been focusing on diversity and equity and inclusion more than in training men and women to be lethal weapons for defense?
We're destroying this country because of this woke movement. And when
we are, I agree.
And it scares me because China and Russia are serious.
Yes,
and
they are.
As poorly as Russia has performed, they still are very strong. And China is watching, and China is positioning itself. And it scares me that in the next, potentially in the next couple of years, China may try something. And our military, I think, is in many ways broken in terms of the infrastructure, and then also in terms of the attitude of the soldiers, focusing on just those things instead of what it should be focusing on, and that is national defense.
How hard would it be to clean it up? Let's say we get a new president, and he comes in, he says, we're not going to have this as the centerpiece of the military. My guess is a whole lot of the Pentagon's got to be basically vacuumed out of there.
Exactly.
And a whole new leadership team, because it's now permeating the highest ranking of our military in every branch.
It is, and that's why it would be so hard. I don't think, on paper it wouldn't be hard, but logistically I think it would be, because so many people would have to get replaced.
Well, I hope they will be replaced, because some of them need to go, and we need to return our military back to a force of men and women who are ready to fight, not just provide good hugs. Dr. Hamada, we're always happy to have you here. And for our audience, you can follow Dr. Hamada on social media. We've got all the links to do just that over at Huckabee.tv. And I hope that you will. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Since you're still here, let me share something with you. If you click on the subscribe button below, hit that notification bell next to it, and click the like button, you know what that's going to do? Virtually guarantee that you don't turn into an AOC fanatic. Do it now, before it's too late.